And so we invite you to come up and ask our panelists anything that might be on your mind. I'm so certain he was right on
Dave Martinson from the American Chemical Society. Thanks to each of you for interesting presentations. I had a question as her comment about the researchers wanted to get to the PDF, and then thinking about the other presentations, talking about user engagement, looking at other sites. I don't recall anyone going or anyone telling me thinking about ESPN or New York Times or LA Times that they wanted to get a PDF. And so I'm wondering if there is really a difference in the type of content we're delivering, and we should not expect people to be engaged at the same level, or if we were engaged at the same level, that the preference for PDF would go away.
I mean, one aspect that I assume would be the shelf life of the content, right? You read, that Ray Allen injured his ankle for the Celtics and isn't playing tonight on ESPN. You don't need to save that and cite it 6 months or 6 years from now, compared to a scholarly article, right? So there's a sense of wanting to have this on an ongoing basis that would lend itself to the PDF or wanting the PDF, but.
Yeah, I was just going to add a note to say that I think it's very hard to understand what users want, because users generally don't know what they want until they see something that they like. And just to cite an example, I once did a big research project when I was with OUP. We were launching a major new portal, and the research was very in-depth in terms of what people thought they wanted and what they were going to use. And then when we launched the site with all these things that people said they wanted, we had a completely different pattern of response from them. The things they said they wanted, they didn't use, and the things they said they didn't want, they did use. So I think the problem with the PDF is that we haven't offered them anything better. What we have offered is more complicated, and the news industry has offered something better. So I think until we create an experience that really gets people, then we'll start to see them use it and get it. That's my thinking.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think it's more they like the PDF as a legacy because that's what they're used to, and they don't have any better experience right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's interesting. We did a little analysis on page views recently, and what we found by looking at the few people who have actually decided to register on the journal site, we looked at their behavior over time and found that if they looked at an article once, they would and if they came back a second time, the average number of times they came back after that were 5. So there's a lot of repeated use. So at least 50% of them came back a second time, and of the 50% that came back, the average amount of times they came back was 5. So I think that it is really different from news content or something that you may read and never look back at with that kind of frequency. And we haven't given them the opportunity, other than the PDF, to do that reliably and consistently well with the HTML versions.
Yeah, one of the things that we developed for the news sites that we were working on is this idea of a briefcase, which allowed people to save content into basically a well that they could go back to forever.
So publishers tried that, and it was called folders or, something like that. But every publisher, and you all know who you are, you all created your own foldering system. So every journal had a different foldering system, and people aren't going to use that.
There's an added level
collaboration thing.
An added level of hoarding. In that respect, is that you may have a well or a folder that I can come back to, but I think there's a trepidation among some within the Academy that I don't know if we're going to have a subscription or if we're going to have a deal with you in 6 months or 6 years. If I have the PDF, if I print it out, if I store it on my hard drive, I have it. I physically have it, and no one can take it away from me. And so if I need it again in the future, I will have access to it. And I think there's that component that we have to deal with as well.
Yeah, I found the discussion on clean design layout for websites really interesting. I mean, from the journal perspective, a lot of us, our websites aren't following those kind of principles. It seems that we're always trying to get as much information on the page as we can. And so two questions or things for you to comment on is, in one sense, we're also looking at the actual article and trying to provide even more content, those added layers where we're adding widgets so that people can look up protein sequences and, relatedness to other organisms and things like that. And, in a sense, it sounds like we're just adding to the clutter. And then the other thing I was wondering if you could comment on is in terms of the clean layout, advertising. I mean, even though we're not making a lot of money from online advertising, as print goes away, that's something we'd have to rely more and more on. And how do we integrate that in such a way that we can maintain that a clean layout without it being too cluttered and messy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that, in terms of presenting everything, really, you can present everything, but you don't have to present everything all at once. That's the difference. Have the modules that allow content to be sort of, captured or encapsulated or smaller or hidden until the user really wants to interact with that content. Provide the visual cues that allow them to know that the content is there without necessarily cluttering up the page where everything's on the page all at once.
Tad Campion, New England Journal of Medicine. About the PDFs, people really do want the PDF. We should be happy that they do. You only want the PDF if it's something you care about. What do they do with it? They either save it or print it out. Print isn't dead. The printer is just moved. But what people want is the right PDF. Any thoughts or suggestions about the user experience that everybody dreams of, that a genius will, on our website, will just give that user the PDF they want? Not the others, just the one that's right for them, even if they haven't known how to search for it. The really intelligent, smart search or delivery service. Thoughts?
Well, I think one of the tricks about is, this is discoverability essentially, is one of the things we're doing with those figures by adding in more rich metadata is to make them more discoverable. But the other thing we'll be doing is depositing them in a lot of third-party repositories to make them more discoverable and more useful in different contexts. So, one of the things that happened when publishers began having authors deposit sequence data into sequence databases was people were able to build more and more algorithms that operated across all of the sequence data so they could do more meta-analysis, which, furthered genomics. And so science was done better. And I think if that's the goal, then we should be making the content as portable and as granular and therefore as discoverable as possible.
Something else to add to that. I think if people want personalized information, then there's a trade-off. If they want to get that information, they have to provide us with the information beyond a keyword search that will enable us to deliver back that rich experience, because we know what their interests are, we know what their network is, we know what societies they're a member of, we know sufficiently enough data about them so that we can create and deliver the right content for them. And at the moment, obviously, there's lots of sensitivities and reluctance of people to give that kind of personal information. And many talks have gone before me that have said those days have to go, because there is too much content. We have to provide that level of information if we want to cut through and get the stuff that's relevant to us. But we can't do it unless people are going to give us that kind of information. And we have to give an incentive to people to do that. And we have to do it across publishers. It can't be something a publisher can deliver in isolation. So
to that point as well, I mean, we can ask people to give us information, but we can also capture information as they browse our platforms. And that information can be stored. And then when they come back, cookies an old thing, you can use that information to serve them more relevant content.
It's just starting to happen. I mean, the Google Currents that presents back content that's relevant to you, and the keynote speaker, was it Page Turn? Can't remember. But one of the keynote speakers on Wednesday night talked about very highly personalized magazine formats now being developed based on the exchange of information that you give, and asked the question, where is this for the academic world? So it will be there, I'm sure, in not too long a time.
So it sounds as though we want, our users want us to be cool, to not bother them, to read their minds, and to leave them alone. So we should design as if we were talking to teenagers, and we will be all set. Any other questions? Well, thank you, all three of you, for really a truly insightful presentation. I know we all enjoyed it, so thank you very much.